If I could do it all over, I'd go back and change her plan. Could do it all over, but I go back and change her plan. I have no regrets, did the best I can. Once was a time I thought about you every day. Once was a time I thought about it every day. I have no regrets, couldn't do it any other way. You know the money and possessions, seen them come and go. The money and possessions, I've seen them come and go. I have no regrets, laying down on my soul. Is that right, Q? Money and possession, I've seen them come and go. The money and possession, I've seen them come and go. Most ago, have no regrets, people, laying down on my soul. If I could do it all over, would I go back and change a plan? Do it all over, would I go back and change the plan? I have no regrets, did the best I can. I said I have no regrets, people, I did the best I can. I did the best I can.
Och jag kommer presentera denna kväll på svenska, men den kommer sedermera gå över till engelska. För att idag har vi en amerikansk gäst vid namn Brian Kramer. Här på min vänstra sida står jag på.
Jag förstår inte.
So we just started out with a blues song. What's the name of this song?
That is No Regrets.
No Regrets, yeah.
One of my own little things.
Okay.
Pieces, sort of sort of sums up, a piece of my own philosophy.
Yeah, yeah.
No regrets.
Yeah.
Why?
Okay.
Life's too short. Let it go.
Sounds like a good philosophy, yeah. Okay, and we are really happy to have you here. Welcome to Hökis Visrum. And I can see it's the first time you're here.
It's my first time.
Okay, but not the last, I hope.
No, hopefully. It might not be the last with this snowstorm. I think we're going to be stuck here for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I hope you have pillows.
Yeah. Yeah, you can say the weather is a bit bluesy today.
It's blowsy.
Yeah, and okay, that's really interesting. Now I can say we don't know each other for so long. I've just seen you in all of these stages in Stockholm. We talked just a little bit, but I know you more than you knew me, I think.
It's scary.
It's scary. Sounds a bit scary. But I don't. Yes, we will see what happens in this interview. Yeah. But first of all, your name is Brian Kramer.
What do you?
Yeah.
I tell you, I didn't do it. It wasn't me.
But
it is Brian Kramer.
Brian Kramer, yes. But you're not from here.
I am not from here. I am from Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn, New York.
Yes.
Okay, all the way to
to Sweden to Hökis.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a trip.
Yeah. I've been to New York, but I missed Brooklyn. But I'm sorry about that.
You missed Brooklyn? Yeah. That's the only reason to go to New York.
Next time, if I have more time.
There's hot dogs, there's Junior's Diner, there's cheesecake, there's good pizza, bagels. You missed it all, baby.
Yeah. Next time I'll be there. Yeah. Go to your street, maybe. Yeah. Okay, but tell us. You grew up in Brooklyn in, is it 1963?
63.
Yeah, okay. So then we have a celebration in a short while.
That's coming up a little too fast, yes.
Okay, 60 is your birthday
60.
in just a few weeks, right?
That's why the hat.
Yeah. Just a week or two or three or something, yeah.
Yeah.
Just to remember.
Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah. It's good. It's good to celebrate 25. It's good for everyone.
Yeah, 25.
25. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, we're celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Blues Jam the same day as my 60th anniversary. So in a way, I'm celebrating 25.
Yeah. Perfect. Applaud for that. So, yeah. We will.
So it's both. It's like 25. That feels like the birth of my blues day. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. It's like your baby here.
Yeah,
your Swedish baby.
So that's been a more important distraction than the actual birthday because.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's just a birthday.
Yeah, we will talk about more about that later. Yeah.
Yes.
The anniversary for the Blues Jam. But first of all, you were born in Brooklyn in '63, and when did you start this interest for music? Was it from your parents or your relatives or?
Not as a player. I mean, we had a record player. We had like my parents were into the music of their day, which was like Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra,
okay, yeah,
and that such. And I didn't have, when I was a kid, I didn't have formulated, any specific tastes. My sister liked hard rock back then, Led Zeppelin, and Fleetwood Mac and all that stuff. The Stevie Nicks era stuff, and she's still into like heavy metal, like stuff like that. She just got out of the hospital, my older sister, and I asked her, I wanted to make her, she was recovering from some surgery, and I wanted to give her a gift. So I said, any drawing you want, I'll do. Just, you know, and she challenged me. She chose Metallica.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, dude. Led Zeppelin, Robert Plant, okay, The Doors, it's Metallica.
Yeah.
So I did a drawing of Metallica, and now she's going to see a Metallica concert soon as well. But anyway, the music of the day was what my parents listened to, and I basically, it was like TV music mostly, and just whatever was playing on the radio. My grandfather on my father's side had a mandolin on his wall.
Okay.
Right, and that was my first interest in that regard with string music was I used to look at this like that. He had a mandolin hanging on the wall, and he was very reluctant to take it down and play it. And one day, he indulged me, and he played like some Yiddish melodies.
Okay.
That's it, and he just, but he was like he didn't offer it freely, so to speak. But it was only till I was about maybe 14, 15 years old that I started getting into like musical tastes, and a buddy of mine started teaching each other to play guitar.
Yeah. Okay. So, but which was your first record you bought for your own money? It's a classic question.
You're gonna love this, folks.
Yeah.
The first actual record that I actually got as a gift, because my best friend at the time worked in a music store called Sam Goody's, right? And it was a music store, and it had like cheap guitars as well, and it was in a mall in Brooklyn. And the first actual record that I ever got, a musical album, because I loved this guy, and I saw all of his TV specials and things like that. So, and I cherished this album. It's Barry Manilow.
Okay, yeah.
That's right. Barry Manilow's greatest hits.
Yeah. But in the 70s, he was a star.
Are you kidding me? It was great. So anyway, so I got a Barry Manilow record basically.
Yeah.
And I used to walk around Brooklyn singing Barry Manilow songs.
Yeah.
Take that, Blues Police.
But it's hard to find the blues in Barry Manilow, though.
Hey man, Barry had soul.
You have to listen really
Not
sharp.
Barry White, Barry soul, but Barry Manilow had soul.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Okay, then you start to play guitar. You bought your own guitar.
I didn't buy it. It was the same friend of mine. His dad brought home a few instruments that were overstocked in the store. So he brought home like a couple of classical guitars that were overstocked. So he got them. So I remember the day that they brought them home, and we were just like joking around, banging on them, pretending to be like driving. And somehow we decided, and I think my friend John, he was a little bit more serious than I was at that point and had more of a focus. And he started to teach himself to play guitar, and I started to teach myself, or he started showing me things, and we started basically having like a little duo thing, like rhythm and lead guitar kind of duo.
Okay.
And mostly, and blues started to factor in. I'll jump ahead a little bit and just say that the blues came about completely by accident.
Okay.
And I've told this story before, and it's I'll tell the abbreviated version, but. We were living in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, and hanging out all the time, and there wasn't a whole lot to do in the summers, and, we would kids from Brooklyn, they like to challenge things, and it's not like mischievous, but it's like there's some mischief nature going on there just to kill boredom. And, we'd already seen Star Wars about a dozen times, paid for it once, snuck in the rest of the times probably.
Yeah.
And there was like this used record store just down one of the side streets, and and we hardly ever saw anybody in there, and we never went in there ourselves really, no reason to. You just all used records, a little shop, like smaller than this, half the size of this, and there was a huge guy behind the counter, like big guy, and he one day we just said, hey. Maybe I shouldn't be embarrassed about it, but we dared each other to go in and grab some records and run.
All right.
To see if the guy would chase us. That's simple. You know, and thing was, we went in and we made a plan to do it, and we was just like, he was on his side, and I was my side. It was like, I didn't know, I'm not sure he knew exactly where he was looking or I was. I think our adrenaline was just focused on the task at hand. And we gave ourselves a signal, and I grabbed a few records, and he grabbed it, and we ran out the store. Zoom, just ran out and bolted. And the guy was sitting there eating his Burger King meal, I remember, and he was like, I kid you not, he was like huge. And, you know, we're running, like, adrenaline's pumping. We get down the street, and I look back, he doesn't chase us. But still, we want to play it safe, because we just committed a crime, even though we didn't think we committed it. We ran all the way back to John's apartment building, and basically we were out of breath, and he never chased us, and in hindsight, it's a used record store. And so he probably really didn't care at all. So anyway, we get up to his apartment, and I did not know what I grabbed. I'm not sure he knew what he grabbed, but apparently I had somehow, through fate or mystic intervention, was hovering over the used blues records bin. And what I grabbed was, there was like, I remember, if I recall some of the records, there was John Mayall and the Blues Breakers album.
All right.
There was like a Country Joe and the Fish record, which was like a psychedelic 60s band. And there was a cover of just the silhouette of this African-American musician that was just, like, we had no clue of any of this. And it was this gentleman here, it was Lightning Hopkins.
All right.
Right? So it was a Lightning Hopkins album in there, and mind you, we're 14 or 15 years old, and we're just bored. We just do this out of boredom. So we basically put the records on the record player. We put on the John Mayall and the Blues Breakers album, Clapton era, I believe, and we never listened to blues. We never listened to that stuff. No impact at all. It was just like skim a couple of songs. It was not interesting at all. Didn't put on the Country Joe and the Fish album, and it was like, it's a completely psychedelic album. Segue to the future, I actually worked with one of the musicians who was on that album later on and recorded with him. You know, the piano player at the time and guitar player named David Bennett Cohen. But anyway, we can talk about that down the line.
Yeah.
But anyway, the Country Joe and the Fish, it's a psychedelic album. We're 14. We didn't do drugs yet. No, it didn't happen.
No.
So then we get to like this silhouette of this profile of this African American musician. We had no idea what it was, and it's like we dropped the needle on the record, and not in the right key, but the first thing we hear is like, I didn't know that anything like that existed in our life. I mean, we're coming from Brooklyn, disco era Brooklyn, Gladys Knight and the Pips, John Travolta, Saturday Night Fever, all of that, Elton John at best was the coolest thing that you could listen to in Crocodile Rock, and then this is what's coming through like our speakers. It was like a foreign language, a secret foreign language that we had stumbled across, and we couldn't get enough of it. It was like, there was no reference point for anything, nothing for anything that we were listening to. It was just him and his guitar on this record singing these songs. And it struck a very, very strong chord for me at that time.
And you liked it directly?
It was compelling. It was beyond like, it was just like being hit in the face with something that was profound.
Struck.
So, and this is like, you have to remember, this is like the mid-70s, and there's no anything. There's no internet, there's no DVDs, there's no nothing. There's like, how do you find this music anywhere? And it's like, and also in the mid-70s and that time, it was a very low point for the blues. Yeah. So it wasn't being like really pushed up. It was like actually in the other direction. It was fun. It was a hard place to find. So we had to go on this like journey, you know, to find. We went to like, you know, bookstores and every place, and we read about the blues, and then we would say, who's Robert Johnson? And we couldn't find Robert Johnson music or Robert Johnson records or anything at all.
Okay.
You couldn't find it. You know, it's like, and we couldn't find people who liked this music. We had to like really, really go on this. So it became like a journey, or like some kind of like pilgrimage to, you know, through the blues, through that stuff, with no guidance at all.
Did you went to the library to find information, or to the record
We went to the
shops,
library.
Yeah.
We went to the library in the city, the New York Public Library, and they had the Library of Congress records that you could listen to, but you can't take them out, like the Alan Lomax stuff. You know, we were listening to that stuff and some field recordings and like Leadbelly, and just, but you know, we couldn't take it with us. And you know, then I would start going to record stores, mostly used record stores in Brooklyn, and because we didn't have a record store, anything that looked good on a cover, we didn't know who it was, but we would just get it for $1. You know what I mean? So it didn't matter who it was. So we just buy a record for $1 and absorb it. Electric blues, you know, country blues, funk blues, you know, Chicago blues, Texas blues. It didn't matter because we were like basically learning about it record by record as we got home and discovered it, or through like references or books.
Yeah.
Robert Johnson was the holy grail of it, because back then they didn't re-release the CDs or the box sets or anything like that.
No.
So what happened was, you know, there were 2 albums that were released in the 70s, but they were very hard to come by, you know. And it's like I found like the first record we found was a British release of British studio musicians doing Robert Johnson cover songs. And nobody got the lyrics right because they didn't understand what he was saying properly. But we thought that Robert Johnson like played with a lap steel player, because that's what we heard on the record. Okay. Until we finally found the first records. Hey, can I play a Robert Johnson song
Exactly.
for you? Yeah?
You read my mind.
Yeah. Let's play a Robert Johnson song.
Yeah, sure. Welcome.
Won't you have your fun? When you're personal, won't you have your fun? Eyes point my mode, bow house on that lawn. Got women in Pittsburgh, straight to Tennessee. Got women, Lord, in Pittsburgh, straight on in Lord, Tennessee. My fries for my Lord, hops all over me. No Lord, colored girl, front teeth and crown without. No steak, no color now, baby. Front teeth and crown with gold. Got a mortgage on my body, laying on my soul. Gonna fast boy mama, that's all night long. Fast boy mama, that's all night long. Gonna fast boy mama, that's all night long.
That's all right.
That was one of Robert Johnson's great
Yeah.
songs.
Okay, so
I've
you
been
can...
doing that one a long time, actually.
Yeah.
Most of Robert Johnson songs that I learned when I was a youngster, I actually still do
Okay.
somehow, you know.
Yeah.
They sort of grow with you.
Yeah. So that's, you can say that's your first blues hero?
I would say Robert definitely was the most mystifying in his approach and everything. It was just so deeply daunting that, him and Lightning Hopkins, those two, Lightning Hopkins and Robert Johnson were probably the first big ones.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Muddy Waters is in that mix as well.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, but if you talk about blues, you always think about the darkness about blues.
Mm-hmm.
These lyrics, it's about, you know, to go to hell and back, you know. You know, it's not something you can hear in the church, huh?
No.
So my question is, did young Kramer had this darkness in your heart?
I've had demons.
You had
Yeah,
demons
no.
when you were 14 years old?
Have you ever raised a 14-year-old?
No, not yet, not yet. Not yet.
Well, let's say that, to be fair, one of the things that I probably related to in the subject matter was because of, I came from a dysfunctional family. There was a lot going on back then that, a young person was trying to process, and, other people as well, my dad wasn't a great dad, and he wasn't good to my mom, and that kind of, situation, and other things as well. And, Brooklyn was rough sometimes as well. So the thing is, I couldn't relate to the African American experience directly that was being drawn from their experiences, but I could relate to an element of, there was a voice in the element of struggle or suffering that resonated with me, that rang to me. And in a way, when I started learning blues songs and wanting to sing blues songs and things like that, it's still that way, where it's like certain lyrics and blues songs resonate with me, even though maybe it's not my personal experience. There's still an element of that even at that age, I recognized it as almost a therapy, if you want to call it something.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you had it, yeah. Okay.
And like I said, we had a bit of a mischievous side back then too, so, there was I like the fantasy of the blues. I liked it, I liked it. When I started learning about, it took me a long time to get to Mississippi and the South to visit. And, I grew up in a family that was not very kindly receptive to people, there was some racism in my family. You know what I mean? And it's like, as a kid, I didn't really understand that because some of my best friends and people like that were, black or Spanish or, even Chinese. And, it's like, having to grapple with that too. And even when I was learning blues and taking the music on board, I got heavily criticized.
Okay.
By my dad or things like that. He liked that I was into music, but, does it have to be that music?
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I understand.
But I didn't understand any of that back then, really. I didn't get it. I tendency, and still don't. Still.
Yeah, you just followed your feelings.
Of course.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned so much about a rich heritage and culture that's still unfolding to me. You know what I mean? That it was like majestic, incredibly majestic,
Yeah.
you know, and noble and like beautiful and poetic. And it's like, how can you put that down? You know, like what came out of that, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, the blues culture is really rich, but it's about often very poor people with nothing, and then you can hear it in the music. They have nothing. So, but did you find any blues concerts too? Did you enjoy any events, blues events?
Good question. Because when we were on our journey of discovery and uncovering, you know, places and things like that, I remember it's like, you know, it wasn't easy to find places. So basically, we had heard about and read about a little blues bar on the, you know, lower to mid-east side of New York called Dan Lynch's Blues Bar.
Okay.
Right, and this was like back then. This was like it was like 2nd Avenue and 14th Street, you know, by Union Square Park, which back then was a very, very, very seedy, we call it in English, area, like suspect area. You have to be careful. You could get your pocket picked. Someone could like walk up to you with a knife. You know, you don't walk through the little. You remember Union Square Park when we were there? It's like this. Right now, it's like a little like hippie hub. You know, it's like there's people playing music and it's beautiful. But back then, it's like you couldn't walk through. You know, you had to walk around the park because you know you could get in trouble.
Yeah.
In that place.
And
there was this little place.
And the 70s in New York was pretty rough. I heard in his historical books.
It was rough, but it was New York.
Yeah.
I actually prefer those times to now, if you actually think about it.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
It wasn't gentrified, but it was real, you know.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's interesting.
You know, but we went to this place, and we were underage to go there.
Yeah.
And we went there to this little club, Dan Lynch's, and you know they had a blues jam on Sundays. That later on I started to go to, but we would make the pilgrimage from Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, which is where I was living at the time. Take two trains to get into the city to get to this place, and you know underage, but they had like $1 draft beers, and they had the best blues bands in New York playing there, and it was a tiny little place.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like a tiny, seedy, dangerous little place, and you know, we're a couple of like white kids with long hair.
Yeah.
This place, and that's where I started like here. That's where we were learning to play guitar, but that was the first time I could actually look at guitar players playing blues that I only heard on records, and look at their hands and see chords and where their fingers were going and things. So I was watching. So it was like study for us to watch the hands of these players and things like that. And I would see like certain musicians, and if I would hear them do a chord of a song that I knew was from a song that I wanted to learn, I would see like this, and I would make my fingers like this, and I wouldn't move this position until I got all the way back home, an hour and a half, and I'd like this, and then I'd take the guitar and I'd like. Like that, I would do things like that where I would just see like these fingerings, and that was also. I'll just mention quickly. That was the first time I had seen someone who Mats also knows. This gentleman who looked almost like this when I saw him. This is a musician that I saw named Larry Johnson, right? And Larry Johnson was the first time I'd seen a finger-picking blues musician playing by himself or with just a harmonica player, or he used to play with this guy who played upright homemade bass on a tub basin with a broomstick. His name was Professor 6 Million. And just one string on a tub basin. It was remarkable. And Larry Johnson played the most remarkable ragtime finger-picking guitar that you could ever imagine. And this was the first time I experienced someone where I had like an out-of-body experience, where I was hearing like, you know, an entire orchestra under his fingers. I was hearing like bass notes, and I was hearing rhythm notes, and I was hearing lead notes, all like cascading and caressing each other in these beautiful melodies with his great voice. And he was in the top of his game back then, playing this music. And I bought his records. They sold his records at the Dan Lynch's. So I remember buying his first album, Fast and Funky album there, and studying it like crazy. And the thing is, like I said, you couldn't learn this stuff anywhere. And he learned from a musician named Reverend Gary Davis, which Reverend Gary Davis is a revered, musician from Harlem, blues musician from Harlem, lived in Harlem like from the 40s, 50s, like he was recording. And he's also an incredibly, like a piano player on the guitar, ragtime, ornate, like fantastic voice, sort of spiritual, religious music in a way, and he can play blues, but I mean, just remarkable. So Larry learned from him, and I got fixated on him, and basically that became like that's it. That's all I want to do. I want to learn how to make an instrument come alive like that in my mind. It was an impossible task.
Okay, yeah. But did you get the chance to talk with this guy?
At that time, I did not specifically. Larry Johnson played there. Larry Johnson worked there. They had at that time a little sort of kitchen area. It was like a rolling kitchen where he made, it was called 3-alarm chili. 3-alarm because it was that hot. Chili, con carne, and hot ham and cheese sandwiches. Like that. And he also sold like what they call toothpick joints, marijuana, behind this place too. So like toothpick joints is basically, there's like nothing in it. It's a piece of paper, it's a seed, it's a stem, and it's a leaf. And
low budget.
And he sold them as well. And Larry was not a guy to be messed with. He was not a guy to be messed with. I remember one time he came out behind this little kitchen area with a butcher knife and was like gonna like pound someone in the head with it because he was stiffing him $10 for something like that. And I was standing this close, and there's Larry with a butcher knife, and I'm like, I love this guy to death, but I'm not talking to him. Yeah. So anyway, I saw him every chance that I could get there. Yeah. I saw him every chance I could get, and I would watch him play, and literally like. Yeah. And listening to and studying his records and finally figuring out some of it. And it was only by mystic intervention, we're skipping ahead a few years later, where after I had made my first album in 1988, and this was about 1989, I get a phone call from a friend of mine who's a brilliant harmonica player in New York, and he said, hey, listen, I just got a call. Larry Johnson's been living in Europe or in Italy for 7 years, and he's just back in town. He needs a place to stay. Do you know of anything? And I'm like, Larry Johnson needs a place to stay? All right, let me check around. It's like, I'm sure going to find out. So basically, a friend of mine, another musician friend of mine, had a room to rent out right down the street from Dan Lynch's, actually. Again, like these little like mystic interventions. And, I have a phone number, and they're communicating to Larry. I'm not talking to Larry. I haven't met him officially before. And so I have to go out, all the way out to Brooklyn, where he's just staying with a friend, way out close to where I used to live, like almost an hour on the subway train, where I was living on the Upper West Side at the time. And I had to go out there to talk to him and tell him about this place and, meet Larry Johnson and talk to him. And I go to this place, and I bring him as a gift a copy of my album that I made with Junior Wells. At that time I made this record with Junior Wells and Mick Taylor, and it was like a very proud production and everything for me at that time. And I meet Larry, and I say, oh, Larry Johnson O'Brien. He's very cordial, and I tell him, it's like, yeah, there's this room for rent. This woman, friend of mine, Franny McGee, she's a singer as well. It's right down the street from Dan Lynch's. Oh, Dan Lynch's. Oh, yeah, great. And I was like, oh, by the way, I'm an admirer of your music. And we start talking, and I give him a copy of the record. And he's like, this is you? I'm like, yeah. I was like, oh, let's put it on. And I was like, I didn't expect that. And he puts the record on right in front of me on this record player. And he starts going through the tracks. And I was like, who's that? Who's this? And he's asking me, and we're talking. And he starts telling me stories about his days when he would play with musicians, great Delta blues musicians like Johnny Shines, or Styx McGee, or Brownie McGee, or Muddy Waters, things like that. And he was in that whole crowd, that folk circuit. And then he would go through, and he got to the last song, the last track of the record, which is just me playing like a steel guitar with Junior Wells, this iconic blues harmonica player on her. It's just the two of us doing an instrumental song, me doing this Delta style. And that's the only song that he listened to from beginning to end. And he was like, that's you playing. And he was like, he wanted to be sure. I was like, yeah, that's me. He says, you sound like you really studied. He was like, testing me, questioning me. But anyway, we made a contact. I'm going to try and keep this brief, but we made a contact. I got him into the place. He was grateful. But simultaneously, I had just released this album, and I was having like album release events like in the city at this club called Tramps. And Larry had no gigs, and he just came to town. And I said, Larry, you playing anywhere? He says, no, I haven't established any of that yet. Well, I've got a bunch of shows, coming up. Would you like to get on the bill with me? I can talk to the clubs, and I can see if I can get you a fee. And he was like, sure, absolutely. And so basically I booked like a series of gigs back then where, he could just play a set, and then I would do like my set, something like that, and he would get a few bucks in his pocket. The first gig was at this place called Tramps, and it was Larry's debut performance back in New York after 7 years.
Okay.
So it's like, and this was like a big event for us, and it was also a big event for him. But I didn't realize the people that would be inviting. There were some people who were like authors and blues elite people and things like that I were introduced to. I'm in the back room with Larry, and this is like a very pivotal moment because Larry was sort of gracious, and he hadn't heard me play in person or anything. He hadn't heard me pick up a guitar, but he was sort of like reluctant. But he was like, well, I suppose we should play something together. Like I'll invite you up. But what can we play? And I looked down at his set list, and I basically knew 3/4 of the songs because I studied them from his record. So I pointed to one. I said, how about that one? It's the song Charley Stone. And he goes, you don't know that? I said, no, I think it was. And he was very defiant.
Yeah.
Larry can be very, very defiant, test you. Picks up his guitar and he starts playing it with verve. And it's just in the back room. Starts playing with full verve and just in his way. And I pick up my guitar. And the thing is, I studied those songs so closely, I knew all the parts that he was playing, but I also knew the accompanying figures and the alternate chord figures. So I started playing different positions for what he was playing. And something happened in that moment where, because I wasn't playing he was taken by the fact that I actually did know the song, and B, that I knew how to play to a person who fingerpicked music. So what happened was, then we played another little song backstage, and he went up on stage and he started, and I was there, and this other great harmonica player named Adam Gussell was in my band at the time, and he was basically going to get up and do a set and invite us for the last couple of songs. And the moment he gets up on stage, he just, without hesitation, he just, well, I want to get Brian Kramer up here and the harmonica player. And he gets it, and we just basically did the whole set with him from the beginning.
All right.
So from that moment on, every show that we did, I started to play with him. Not only that, but when I would start up with my band at the time on stage, he couldn't help himself. So all of a sudden, he would just grab his guitar and stand there by the side of the stage. And he wanted to play with the band. So it started a relationship that lasted 15 years of all of a sudden we're playing. And Larry is notoriously known for two things. not really liking other guitar players to play with him because he doesn't like guitar players who play like guitar players, and you don't like white people.
Okay.
So, and all of a sudden, there's like this, skinny white kid with a guitar on stage with him everywhere, and it was very, very, very questionable for a lot of folks. But that's the beginning of my journey with Larry. I was a long way around.
Yeah, where was
Fun. It's fun to hear.
I can do a Larry Johnson song if you want.
Exactly, that's perfect, because then we take a Larry Johnson song, look forward to hear that, and afterwards we take a short break with a little coffee or tea, and then we will go back
Okay.
afterwards. So I can sit here and just listen. Oh, you want to play?
No, Mons is playing on this.
Of course, yes.
I know a fool getting way down south. We call him Charley Stone. He make a living, go around town, and blown on the slide trombone. Make it moan, make it sing. Tell me where to get that thing, go ahead and go. Blowing on your slide trombone. Played that thing on the Market Street. We can say, lead beat, go ahead, stone. Blowing on the slide trombone. Well, they played it Sunday morning, all the women gathered round. Make a preacher lay his Bible down. Go ahead, stone. Blowing on the slide trombone. Blow on. That thing on the Market Street. Ricky Sam will lead his big breast on, blowing on your slide trombone. I know a fool who keeps way down south. We call him Charley Stone. He make a little way downtown, and then blowing on the slide trombone. Play that thing, Lord, all the time. Had a wickedness on his mind, but stone. Blowing on your slide trombone. I say, Charley Stone. Play that bone. Blowing on your slide trombone. Play that bone. Blowing on your slide trombone.
That's really good. Okay, then we take a break.
Take a break.
Little girl, don't you lie to me. Tell me where you sleep last night. In the pines where the sun never shines. I'm laying up little girl, don't you lie to me. Tell me, where did you sleep last night? In the pines where the sun never shines. I shivered the whole night long. My husband was a railroad man, killed 1.5 miles from here. His head was found in a driver's wheel, and his body has never been found. Little girl, where will you go? Going where the time's in the pines where the sun never shines. Shivered the whole night
Yes,
Where
we're
were
back.
we, Sebbe?
Yeah, where were we? We were. You met. You get the friendship with Johnston, Larry Johnston.
Larry Johnson.
Yes. But you turned everything forth to the 80s or something there.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose. But let's go back a little bit to the 70s. I want to know which concert was your own concert. It was the first time you sat on a stage with your guitar and played.
Actually,
That's a
it
magic
wasn't
moment for all the
70s.
musicians, I think. The
It
first time.
was the 80s, actually. 'Cause
The
I didn't-
80s?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, because I didn't have, I'd been going, probably in the late 70s, in the early 80s, I started going to the blues jam at this place, Dan Lynch's.
Yeah.
And then started going to what they call the hootenannies or the open mic nights through the village. So they had places where you could sign up and play 2 or 3 songs. And there was like maybe 3 or 4 places, all within a few block area of Greenwich Village. You know, West 3rd Street, Bleecker Street, McDougal Street. And they all had sign-ins. And what we would do is we would go around and we'd sign in on all of them. And then, you know, like, hopefully make as many of them as we could before we were called. And usually maybe we'd get 2 out of 3 if we were lucky. Something like that. But, you know, what we would do is we would get up there, me and the same buddy who did the lifting of the records.
Yeah, it's the same
Yeah,
guy.
same guy.
Yeah.
So we had like a little act. We were getting together basically where we were coming up with some songs. And, you know, guitar and, you know, like lead guitar and rhythm guitar.
And your own songs?
No, not yet. No, I didn't start writing yet.
No.
This is just basically a selection of blues songs from these people, Lightning Hopkins or Robert Johnson or Muddy Waters and things like that. And we would go around and do these and basically, you know, learn in the process and have some fun, go try and... The jam session at Dan Lynch's was a humiliating thing, mainly because Dan Lynch's was, like I said, it was a bit of a rough place, and the musicians that went to jam sessions back then were very territorial and protective, and like had their own ownership of what they did in the blues, and also the people that they played with. So if you were a new person or a young person, or if you even gave like a whiff that you didn't know what you were doing, the lions would just like gobble you up. It was pretty much like that. And so it's like, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I had the guts and the audacity to want to sit there with a guitar and try.
Yeah.
Play something, just because it's just stuff that I was figuring out from records mainly, or learning from each other. And there was one guy named Bill Dicey who also had some records and played with a lot of great people, and he was fairly well known in the blues circles. And he was the only guy that when I was at the jam session and I was like, in tunnel vision, like what the hell, like everybody, I was just feeling the heat from everybody around me because I didn't know what I was doing. And he was sitting there in a bar and he was looking at my hands, and he just gets up and he walks over and he goes, "Oh, I see what you're trying to do." And he actually takes my hands and he puts it in the right position, to do it. And I get through a song, and he was the first person that actually made me feel like, welcome that way. He extended himself. So that was a great moment, and but basically it was only, I started wanting to write songs. I'll tell you why. I have actually a picture of this guy here. This is a very well-known musician named John Paul Hammond, the son of the great John Hammond, the record producer and talent scout who discovered, of many people, he tried to get Robert Johnson to do a performance at the Spirituals to Swings concert, I believe it was, John Hammond, and they couldn't find him. They couldn't find Robert Johnson, so they got Big Bill Brunsey instead, because they found out that Robert Johnson was dead. John Hammond Jr. was a great young white emulator of Delta Blues. He played these resonator guitars as well, and it was the first concert that I ever saw at this place called Folk City. I'd listened to his records, and in 1983, I believe it was, and this little Folk City is where Dylan used to play.
Yeah, we talked about Dylan before,
And this was it was a full house, and I went in there, and I'm sitting there, just like a young kid, watching this guy, and I'm mesmerized because it's, again, the first time I'd seen somebody play a bottleneck with a steel guitar and just play these songs like incredibly by himself, sitting on a stool. Everything was just like riveting, and it's a small place. And during the break, in the club they had like a big phone booth. They still had phone booths back then. And one of those phone booths with the cascading double doors that open and close. And he went in there for some reason. I don't think he was making a call, but I think he just went in there for a moment. And as he was coming out, I sort of cornered him and I said, "Oh, Mr. Hammond." He did one song that I hadn't heard before, and I asked him about it. I said, "There was this song. What was that song? I think it was called Bullfrog Blues," which I wasn't familiar with, but it was so riveting. And I said, I just said the wrong thing to him. I said, "Did you write that song?" And he was very taken back. And he just said to me, with a stutter, he said, "I don't write my own songs," and walked away angry.
Okay.
He was and he was visibly like I put him off. And it was that moment. That very moment, I just said to myself, well, if somebody's going to be that, taken back because he didn't write his own songs, I'm going to start writing my own songs. So I never have that experience, if nothing else. But literally, I think within the next day, I started figuring out how to write my own songs. From there. Okay. So from this gentleman, John Hammond, who I still revere as a holy, musician.
Okay.
So thank you, John Hammond, for getting pissed off at me for saying the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Later on, he did wind up writing his own songs, by the way. A few on each album later.
Okay.
after he heard that I was writing, probably.
Yeah. Getting inspired, yeah. Yeah.
So sorry, just to wrap up. So then I didn't write yet, but then it's like I started writing after him, and then that was an interesting process as well, because I had like a couple of songs, which you can get a sample of it in a little bit if you want.
Yeah.
The first songs that I wrote.
And you tried them in Greenwich Village, in the village.
Yeah, I did start to try them around, basically.
Yeah. Because when I was in New York, I was
Actually,
there.
yeah.
I was in the Greenwich Village area and walked around with. I just read the biography of Dylan about these places, and some of the places are still there.
Some are still there.
Yeah, Café Wa.
Café Wise, it's a bit more of a touristy place.
Yeah.
Not like the same. Many places are gone. Many of the places that I, hold and find dear are no longer exist, unfortunately. But yeah, that was a really, even back then I call myself like third generation bohemian or vagabond, something like that. Like, because I feel like I'm the last, like the last of the dying like bohemians from that generation that got to like see Dave Van Ronk in the Village.
I just saw
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Or like, great musicians and players mingling and playing and jumping up on stage, and it was a fantastic time. And you could literally make, some kind of living playing clubs in the Village and things like that. And you would like get home with some money in your pocket and you would play the sets and you would just grow. And then you would go to Washington Square Park and jam.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, exactly.
There was no shame in that,
But that kind of atmosphere is still there. Because I was there in May, June or something, and I feel a little bit of that atmosphere.
It is. They try to keep
not as much as the 80s or not as much as the 60s, but
they still have friends who are part of it. They're trying.
Yeah, they're trying to keep it alive.
As they should.
This bohemian style, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so but do you still go back to New York?
I did fairly regularly, annually. I would go every year since I moved here. I would go back to New York at least once a year, just because I needed to kind of reconnect with the scene and see people and certain aspects of food culture that just had to have. But it as something. I have a saying. When you live in New York, it changes around you. And the thing is, my saying is, New York forgets you long before you forget New York. So it's like if you're living outside of New York and a year goes by, you go back, you see some change. You live, 2 years go by, you go back, you see some more change. 5 years go by, and it's like you start noticing like things close down, change. 7 to 10 years, entire blocks disappear. I'm kidding you not. Demolition in an entire block. And New York is a place that you don't go to places by address. You go by, where it is and you go there. All of a sudden you're standing on a corner and like a block is missing and you don't know where anything is and you don't know where you are. So as the years continued, so basically up until maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, I went regularly and then I started skipping a year. And then when 2019, I was supposed to go back and do a tour that was with some decent paying gigs with a good friend of mine named Chris Lowe, who still lives in the Village, who is also a protege and teacher of David Van Ronks. And David Van Ronks produced his album. Chris Lowe is an amazing musician who lives in the Village and writes like a folk god. He's great, and I'm happy to have him as a friend. And he arranged a couple of shows for us there, and I had him on tour here as well to do a few shows, which he really loved. He got to meet Izzy Young, and we did some playing there, and we filmed some stuff there. And I lost my train of thought. How about that?
2019.
Yeah, 2019 exactly.
Yeah.
So that was basically the last time. Because COVID canceled the flights and the gigs, and then COVID hit, and then a couple of years went by. So basically, it's been 5 years.
Okay.
And now it's like I have a very slim desire to want to really go back because what else has changed? And I do have some family there that I miss, but in general, it's like basically I just go there to have like very expensive, meals and nothing else.
Yeah. Maybe find a...
That I can't even eat anymore because I'm a diabetic, thank you very much.
Okay. Maybe find a small memory somewhere.
Right, exactly. I mean, like I said, nobody goes to New York for a great salad.
That's true.
So yeah, so it's been 5 years, and hopefully at some point I could go back. I'm hoping maybe the art brings me back, which would be nice. The art, I had a very surreal experience recently, segueing into that, where because I got into the art through the COVID period.
Okay.
That's when, I did go to school for art, and I have drawn consistently, but when I could no longer play music, and there was no gigs for myself, for anyone that I knew, and everyone was struggling with that, the thing that started to shine through was that I could actually develop my art in a proper way, because it's very difficult to follow two masters in life. The music itself takes a whole lot of focus and just upkeep and the whole process of it, and then to develop as an artist as well. It's two separate masters that are always going to be a distraction to each other to get it done right.
Yeah.
So to speak. So.
But can also be dynamic, I think.
It can be. Well, now it's getting to that point, because now I think now that the art is developed in a very interesting way. But the thing is that a few months ago, I was invited to have my art as part of an exhibition in, guess what? My old high school of art and design, which is one of the best high schools for art in New York City and beyond. There was School of Visual Arts. I mean, there was art and design, and then there was the one that the film Fame was about. I can't remember the name right now. It'll come to me. But anyway, they asked me. A friend got in touch with me who was also into music, and they showed drawings. And she saw I went to art and design, and asked if she would like me to. She would submit some of my pieces there. So it was a part of, literally on display in New York City without my being there, which was a very, very interesting, weird experience, considering the fact that I didn't graduate.
Okay.
She said, it doesn't matter. She said, Tony Bennett didn't graduate either, and he went there. We still show his art.
Okay, yeah.
So anyway, yeah.
So you had a plan to be a designer or artist when you went there?
Everybody else had a plan for me. I just wanted to develop as an artist. When I went to art school, everything fell apart, because one thing I realized I did not want to do was art and design. When I was in junior high school, Mark Twain High School for the Gifted and Talented. I know it sounds arrogant, but that's the name of the school. Mark Twain Junior High School for the Gifted and Talented. And I was one of the gifted and talented.
Wow.
Anyway, but I was in junior high school, I was the best artist in my school. That's cool. That's okay. That's great. It's got its perks. I got out of classes, without a problem, and bullies wouldn't beat me up because I would draw something for them. It was a good thing to have. When I went to the High School of Art and Design, I was far from the best artist in the school, because this was the best artists to get into the caliber of the school from everywhere. Number one, okay, that's a challenge I could accept. Number two was that everything, every course, every subject that you had to take was geared to perfection, so that you could be a career artist for the New York Times, an architect, things like that. And I was not interested in that at all. It was boring to me. I did not see myself in a cubicle doing art. I was, I did some, what's the word? Not understudying. I worked under, for a while, an artist at the New York Daily News, because I won a prize at my school, and they got me to meet this artist, Bill Cressy. So I sort of was followed him around, and he showed me how it worked and the process and things like that. And he had a regular comic strip in the New York Daily News, and he was very, very, he was like a mentor to me for the art. But it was also, I realized that it was something that You know, in hindsight, I saw how he worked and I saw the situation, and I was just getting into the music and the blues. So I literally dropped out of school and said, I want to become a musician, a blues musician. And I was awful. I sucked. I was not a good musician. And everybody knew I was a good artist. My family was like, you idiot. Everybody was like, what, you're throwing away. My mom was like, you're throwing away a God-given gift. What are you doing? And everybody was disappointed in me. Everybody was completely. Until, you know, I made my first album and they were disappointed in me, but they didn't. You know, but I still always drew. I still always, over the years, I would always, especially in the summers, I would pick up the pad and I would draw for a month or two, and then it's like, you know, when you get back to the music and things like that, it's very difficult to like want to continue. But COVID, something happened during COVID when the first month, after the first month, desperation was hitting and there was no money coming in, and I was basically trying to politely sell package deals of all my stuff so I could get 1,000 crowns here or 1,000 crowns there from like a book, a CD, 5 CDs, a book, and this. And somebody who was a regular at the jam session and a fan of the music said, "Oh, I'll definitely get the package deal." But I also noticed that you draw. I was thinking, would you draw a picture of me with one of my favorite musicians? And this did not occur to me at all, not even the slightest. It did not occur to me to go down that road. And Annika woke up that morning. I said, something very interesting just happened. She said, what? I said, well, somebody said they'll pay me to draw a picture. And she goes, oh yeah, you do that too. So what happened? Yeah. So this was like, what happened was, I sat down and I did this. His name is Peter. Peter, I call him Little Junior. You know, from the Blues Jam. Sorry, Peter. I'm drawing a blank there. So anyway, Peter says. I sit down and I draw a picture for Peter. He wants me to draw a picture of him with Junior Wells or something like that, I believe, and I do it, and it's rough, and it's the way I basically drew up until that point. It's nothing bad, but it's nothing, you know, holy or anything like that. I mean, it's a good picture. It's good. I know I can capture something. And I did it, but something happened when I drew him.
Yeah.
In that moment, I lost all thoughts except for like the focus of drawing. I wasn't worried about anything. I wasn't, thinking about when this was going to end or anything. I spent like hours just enjoying drawing, and I just decided I'm going to do it again tomorrow. And that was basically it. So from that moment until now, every day that I possibly can, that I'm not somewhere else, I get up and I draw. I meditate, I do some chanting, and then I basically put on a coffee, get out a blank piece of paper and a pencil, and my subjects choose me, and I just start, and then, you know, I go until it's done, and then the next day, and then the next day, and that's what I've been doing every day as that's possible, where I'm not, you know, here, or something like that, or somewhere else, and this has been what somehow started to manifest from that.
Yeah. Because I saw them on Facebook. I saw new ones every day on Facebook. So
yeah, and I'm not. And in a way, it's like I just feel like giving it up. You know, people question me. They're like, "Oh, you were copyrighted. Why you just giving it away?" But it's like, you know, it feels like an incredible opportunity because I've been able to invite into this world people that I deeply, deeply admire in the music world and in the art world that I've never imagined they would like reach out to me. You know, people like, you know, like Bob Margolin, who's like Muddy Waters guitar player, who was like my big hero, who I saw at the Beacon Theater that changed my life. He saw a picture that I did of Paul Osher, a great harmonica player who also played with Muddy Waters, and he wrote me and said that picture that you drew is better than any photograph that I could put for an obituary that I'm writing, for a piece that I'm writing, an appreciation piece. Would you mind if I use it to publish in a blues magazine? So that was the first published picture, and then other people as well started asking me to do designs because this, just what I couldn't do with the music, I somehow was trying to put into the line, into these pictures. I was trying to put the same feeling.
Yeah.
I wanted every musician to feel like how I felt when I listened to them and when I played the music. I wanted to try and find that. And what I didn't realize was that with this kind of style, which this isn't really a new style to me. When I was back in high school and junior high school, I was intrigued by three tones, like black, white, and gray, and mostly white as the absence of color, not even as like a negative space. So it's really like just black and gray most of the time. The white is just like a negative space to me. So so it's like the same thing. I just decided, well, do what I know, go back to that. What I didn't realize with this style, with these subjects, wasn't really done in that depth before. R. Crumb is like the icon for the blues in his style, but that's very, very specific and very, very,
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yes, really nice pictures and drawings. We will make a link in the movie maybe about your drawing, so they can just click the link and find your drawing.
Before we get into the next thing, could I ask, because I have my friend Pernilla here.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, it's in step with what I'm doing right now, because this is, other than my blues jam, the only project that I've basically been doing at all since before COVID was with my old friend Pernilla. And we've been doing a few, we did a show and we did another little appearance.
Sure.
And I just wanted to invite her to do a song or something.
Yeah, of course.
Is that okay?
But I thought you will draw her now.
Welcome,
Pernilla.
So,
searching down the street, baby brown, baby brown, baby brown, no, 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 baby brown, no, no, we're searching down the streets for you, baby brown, baby brown. We're searching here for you. They were searching here for you. We're searching here for you. They were searching here for you.
Okay, so now we know you started write your own songs and you tried them at in the village, and then you went over to Europe. When did you came to Europe
that's
at the first
interesting.
time? For the first time?
You're asking all the right questions.
Yeah. And why Europe? That's a good
Why
question.
Europe?
Yeah.
You got another hour?
You get over 10 seconds. No, joking. Joking. Okay, let's hear. Why Europe? That's a good question.
I was playing in Washington Square Park, right?
Yeah.
One day,
Okay.
and it's a summer with my buddies. Washington Square Park was the scene back then. It's like you could get your crowd, everybody got their little crowd, everybody got the corners. Beautiful day, dobro, you know, everybody's like having a good time. Fiddle players, flute players, conga players, dobro, 5 guitar players, just having a great time. And you know, and I think this was the first day where it's like sitting there was like eating an ice cream. She'll probably have the story better than me, but there was like this really cute blonde-haired girl with like pigtails sitting there. And as I was playing, she's just sitting there looking like she's enjoying herself. And I basically went over, and while I'm playing, I put my head on her shoulder, you know, which later I found out was disgusting. Because I was sweaty. Anyway, the next day, I saw her again. I ran into her. Maybe getting the order mixed up, but I ran into her again. And what happened was we decided, I gave her my phone number. You know, she was there and we were talking for a second and she left and I just ran up to her and gave her my number. And she called me. And we basically, within a few days, we basically started to create a relationship. And we started to date, and she moved into my apartment from the YWCA. Right? She literally moved in with me, and after our first date, while we're in my little rented room in Brooklyn, it wasn't even an apartment, it was a rented room in a house.
What year was this?
This was 1990.
Okay.
90. And that was when I realized, wait a minute, naive Americans, I think I'm supposed to be going to Sweden or Switzerland or something. Only up until that moment I didn't realize that a week before in the same park, somebody saw me playing and scouted me and talked to me and said, hey, wow, I really like your blues, I like your playing. I bring over musicians, blues musicians from the States to do little tours in Scandinavia. Would you like to come in like a couple of months? And play for 3 months in Scandinavia. So yeah, absolutely, sure, let's do it. You know, we talked a couple of times, I got his number. You know, people tell you stuff all the time, and it's just like, and then you move on, you know. So I was thinking, she was like, yeah, you're kidding, right? So I called the guy right there and talked to him on the phone with her. I actually thought he was Swedish because he said Sweden, and he's actually from Arkansas. Professor Washboard, remember Professor Washboard? Yeah. And what happened was, I wound up going there a month or a few weeks earlier than I was supposed to start this tour, playing with him. It was a tour of clubs and the street, and he had a very professional street act, you know, and...
so he was a musician?
Yeah, he was a musician. He played washboard.
Yeah.
And also electric, cans.
Yeah, like cans.
Yeah, cans, but they were electric, with thimbles, and they So with some really great musicians, from what I understood. Mm-hmm. So basically, so we arrange everything. I get a ticket early. I go over there and wind up just meeting a few weeks before, a month before or so, all these really great musicians. Many that are still friends today, like Alan Finney and Chuck Anthony and Jerome, Bill Bryant. All these great musicians were around, and it's like, this is before I actually started to do this tour with Professor Washboard. And I was like, I remember telling this guy, Jim Metcalf, who was a brilliant guitar player, and unfortunately he was murdered the same year. It was one of the worst crimes in Swedish history, Jim Metcalf, but a brilliant musician from the States. I told him, I'm having so much fun, I don't even know if I can hang out with you guys. I don't even know if I want to do this tour with Professor Washboard. And he was like, oh, no. You want to do that tour, you're going to make some serious money. And he's good at what he does. And I actually got Jim on the tour as well with us, with Derek Walker too. So what happened was, I wound up getting like a few weeks before this inside view of Sweden that many Americans didn't see. I went to see the summer house, I went to the forest, did all these things like
and
that.
And your girlfriend followed you?
Yes.
Of course.
Well, she lived there. So we wound up
she was just
together.
for vacation in
New York.
Yeah.
Which is a whole other story why she wound up in New York.
Then we can take in the
That's like there's my side and our side, and both like converge in this very mystic way. But we wind up, so basically that was the beginning of our relationship. And I spent 3 months in Scandinavia and Sweden touring. Then I went back to the States, and Annika wound up moving in with me there, and we lived in New York together for 6 years, but traveled back and forth to, Sweden, when we could. Had our son in New York, and then when she got pregnant with our daughter, we decided to come to Sweden to have the baby here and try it out here for a while. Mm-hmm. And that became the new destiny.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
And that's the abbreviated version. It's really quite an ornate story.
Okay, but that's interesting because this culture mix is always interesting, I think. So what was your first impression of the Swedes and Sweden? Did you came here in the summer or in the spring or in the winter? The summer, right?
It was, when was it?
It's because it's a big difference,
I think it was somewhere
was
around...
it like this?
I think
or was it
I think it was, what was it, like June?
Oh, that's good.
But it was still chilly. It was still
then you can get in love with this country.
But it was maybe a little, something like that. I can't, it's a little foggy, but I know it was still chilly and rainy. It was still like jacket weather. But anyway, my impression was I was an open book. I'd never been out of the States before. So it was like, in the village they had a big party for me in a loft like the day before we left. And it was like, everybody was like, he's breaking the barrier, he's leaving. We had like this big throw-out, blow-out party. Speedo Jones was there, and everybody who was anybody in the village that I knew was like hanging out. And it was just a good time.
And you came to Stockholm, or?
First, I think, believe it or not, we came to Stockholm first, but we didn't get. But I was whisked off to the summer house rather quickly in my cowboy boots and long.
And where's the summer house?
Between Hedemora and Säter, in a little place called Gluten. So, and I haven't done much summer house in the woods in my life,
Okay, before you were just a city guy, typical city guy, right? Yeah.
So
that's a big
Central Park, Prospect Park. But my impression, I was an open book, and I was like really taking everything in and just trying to enjoy this new adventure in front of me. So it was very, very, very interesting.
Yeah, and you felt welcome, of course.
I felt very welcome.
Yeah. Otherwise, you
and it was like after a few weeks, like I said, of like summer house and like showing me like the stuff that most Swedes want to show you. That's not like Stockholm, that kind of thing. When we wound up back in Stockholm, I said, there's got to be some kind of live blues around here somewhere. And I picked up like the, what is it, Dagens Nyheter or Aftonbladet or something like that. And it said, tonight at Kaos, Allen Finney, and Fat City. So I said, okay, let me go out to the old town, Galveston. And I went out there and I had my guitar with me, and literally I went there, and when I walked in the room, I felt the vibe of the place, and it was really like a wonderful atmosphere and a vibe, and you know, I heard the band play, and then I enjoyed it. I took a break, and I started talking to like this guy Jim and Alan Finney, and he immediately invited me up to sit in with him, and that made me feel very welcome. And that was it. From that moment, it was like just,
Yeah.
you know, I felt welcome.
I remember that place actually, Chaos, because I lived close to there when I was a teenager. Now it's an Irish bar, right?
Right, O'Connell's.
O'Connell's now, yeah.
But I mean, that was like, to me, the watering hole, because like they had the big basement downstairs
Yeah,
too.
I remember it.
And all the expat musicians seemed to gravitate there and create events. And Parvin was the owner was very embracing for everybody there. And, you know, in the kitchen was Bob Manning. You remember Bob Manning, a great soul singer.
Okay.
Bob Manning was also like slinging burgers on the grill and things like that. And, you know, Alan would do a song, he would kick off like a Howlin' Wolf song, like a Little Red Rooster, and Alan would lean in the microphone. Hey, Bob, wherever you want, come on. And then you hear him in the back, I'm finishing an order. And then Bob Manning would like have his dirty, disgusting, he'd like do this, and he'd get up and say, well, I got a little red. He would start to sing a Howlin' Wolf song. He would, 3 verses, and then he would walk back into the kitchen before you would smell smoke.
And this happening in Stockholm.
Right.
Wow.
That's cool. Stockholm in the 90s. Not so bad, huh?
No, it was really like a little microcosm.
Yeah.
Considering like the fact that my relationship with Gamlistan and the music scene now, what it's
Yeah.
evolved to, that really was like, you know, a very welcoming and fitting moment that, you know, unbeknownst to me or anything, I had no crystal balls or anything like that, but at the same time, my relationship with Gamlistan continues to be like this profound love affair with a strange culture of the blues, right? That's
Yeah.
so weird.
Interesting. Because at the same time, I lived there in Gamla stan. That's Skräddargränd, the small street. But I was only a teenager, but I ran around, you know, at Chaos and Curbits and
Right.
you know, these kind of places. Okay, interesting. Oh, and then you organize this blues jam sessions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, when I moved here,
Mhm.
that was one of the things, the short story for that
Yeah.
is 2 things that I was seeking. I was seeking musicians that thought like the way I thought. I don't mean like mentally, but I mean like had a connection to the music the way I had, that I wanted to play with. And that was like sort of a process of uncovering, you know, trying to figure out how do I do that.
But was it hard to find these kind of blues souls?
Yeah, well, not as hard apparently as one would think, because things come to you, you know. But the thing was that was one aspect, and the other thing was that there were not a lot of places really to play blues, and I started giving courses at like Studio Framida, for example, and the headmaster of the one school that I was at, he was taking private lessons from me, and we were having a beer after like a private lesson in the school after I gave a workshop. 2 things happened simultaneously. I met a guy who was in one of the workshops that I was arranging in a music store, that he was trying some cheap knockoff resonator guitar, and I went up to him and I said, is that any good? And he said, it's okay. He was like, it's what you would expect it to do. And then he looks at me for a second and he says, hey, you're that guy that's having the course, the blues, it's like the blues course at Studio Framida, right? I said, yeah. He says, I'm signed up for that course. And I was like, oh, cool, great. And we started talking about blues and like, you know, musicians that we loved, like Alvin Youngblood Hart and Corey Harris. And he said he was going to make a tape with me of Alvin Youngblood Hart's album that I didn't have. And he also said, and I told him, I said, I'm looking for musicians that play that kind of music. And he said, well, look no further. I basically play with country type music, but that's what we love. And he was playing drums at that time. His name is Torgel Bennick. And, you know, that was one part. And the other part simultaneously is the headmaster of the school goes, is there anything you miss in New York about the scene? I mean, you're here. I said, well, I'll tell you the truth. One thing that I miss is there are no jam sessions here. There are no blues jams. There were none. I mean, I'm not saying there was some once in a while. At that point, there were no blues jams anywhere at all. No one was arranging blues jams. And there hadn't been for quite a while. For many, many years, almost a decade, I don't think there was like any kind of arranged events for like blues. So I missed blues jams. He says, well, what's that about? He didn't even know. So I explained to him the concept of the beautiful concept of a blues jam, of it like being a watering hole, of like musicians spontaneously coming up. They don't know each other, but they call out keys and songs. He says, well, why can't we do that here? And I'm like, well, you know, we need to find a place. I don't have resources for equipment. He says, I have a school. I have all the equipment you need. So basically what happened was this happened almost simultaneously with me, Torgel inviting me out to, what was the area? Where you lived at that time?
In Årsta.
Årsta. Out to Årsta, and you can correct me if I get any of this wrong, but he invites me out to Årsta to play with him and upright bass player, Pia, right? And I love drums with brushes. I love upright bass. It's fine. And we kick off the first song or so. I'm in heaven because it sounds like I want it to sound. I don't have to say anything. It's just like I'm doing a Robert Johnson song or something like that. I'm in my comfort zone. And then all of a sudden, this guy bursts into like the door and saying, "Why, you're having a jam and you didn't invite me?" or something. And he was actually a little bit pissed off.
Yeah.
He was actually upset because, and it's Mats.
Okay.
So, and he plays harmonica and he sings.
Oh.
And he had a band called Mats.
Yeah.
Max. Magic Max. Anyway, and then Mats basically comes in and it seals the deal. That was it. I don't know how long we played, but everything we played just felt like, to me, it was inspiring because I felt like there was this kinship of something that I didn't have to look further for at that moment. It just felt really like I can play with this, I can work with this, I can write with this, I can, you know. So basically we started playing little gigs around, and then that's when, you know, I came to the guys and I said, this guy wants us to start a blues jam up. And, you know, the first one we did, Bosa, the guy from Bosa Baco, I can't remember his name, he was a really cool guy.
Just det.
Yeah, Bosa something. Oh,
Stenhammar.
yeah,
Stenhammar.
Bosa Stenhammar. Anyway, he was one of the only person to agree to do it because nobody wanted to have a blues jam. Nobody understood. Everyone that I tried to pitch the idea to, and I mean everyone everywhere, thought just, when I explained it to them, they were like, that sounds like a recipe for disaster. You want amateurs on my stage and you think it's going to be good? I'm like, it's going to be amazing. You have no idea. It's going to be great. It's going to be, nobody bought it. Nobody. Bosa was the only guy that gave us a shot. But there was one hitch. He couldn't commit to consistency. And the rule was people had to know where it was, like clockwork. They had to just be able to show up without thinking about it and know it was always there. It couldn't be with the same people. So we did like one session there, and he couldn't commit to more dates right away. It was like, and I was like, this isn't going to work. So I went on the search again for a place, and this is going to take more time than we have, but it's worth it. Anyway, I played a gig with another band before I was playing with Mats and the crew. Pelle Lerf was the bass player of the group. I was playing with some of his guys when I was trying to find musicians. Pelle Lerf was the head of the Stockholm Blues Society back then.
Okay.
We did a gig at Stompen. And Stompen didn't have much blues. They were still doing more Dixieland and stuff, but they did feature blues once in a while. And we played a gig there, and it was crowded. It went over really well. And at the end of the gig, we got the Ain't Gonna Till. People wanted more, so I did another one. And I played, and what happened was, I thought, this is great. I walked right up to the woman who was like the bar manager or whatever after, says, oh, well, thank you for tonight. Hey, let's do it. She's like, I'm never going to have you here again. Says, that was unbelievable what you did. Never going to play in my club again. It's like, what? What did I do? She says, you were supposed to end at midnight. It's now 20 after. And she said, that's it. And through. And it's like everybody was still there. Everybody was still drinking and having a good time. And the next day I called, what's his name? Kramer. He was the upright bass player, and he booked Stompin'. And he goes, I'm sorry, Brian. I don't know what you did, but she just doesn't want you back, so I can't book you. So I was banned from Stompin' at that time. And that was the only place that I didn't go to because I knew that if I walked in there, I might have a problem. So I had after Mosebaka failed and no one wanted it, I was with Pella, the headmaster of the school, and we walked by Stompin', and I saw it was closed up, they were doing renovation. And I thought to myself, let's give this a shot because maybe the person's not there, or maybe they forgot something. And so I go in, and they're doing some renovation. They're sort of closed for business for the moment, and apparently they sold the place. They're under new ownership. I asked for who the owner is. This guy, Joseph Haddad, comes out of the back room, and we sit down, and I said, I have a proposal for you. And we made it so easy for anybody. We made it so easy. The stage was great. And I remember sitting across from Stompin' years before when I first came here and I hearing music coming out when they had a cafe across the street. And I said, we made it so easy for him. We said, you don't have to even pay the musicians. You don't have to pay us anything. Studio Framia paid us at the time. They actually gave us 500 crowns each. They supplied all the equipment. They basically, we just had to have the name on the bass drum, that kind of thing. So I said, you don't have to pay us. We'll have a jam session. We wanted to make it easy, right? We arranged it. Somebody called me about getting it in the news, about writing about it in the paper. I don't know how that happened, but somebody basically tipped us off. The Friday before the first gig, right? The Friday before the first gig, a quarter of a page article comes out. And I think, the Friday Piston. Right? And we get there to the club, and it's to set up, and there's a freaking line 2 streets down. You remember that? It's there's people can't wait to get, there's literally streets down, lined up. People are queued up. It's free to get in, of course. It's the place is completely packed 10 minutes after the doors open, And it's and we start to play, and, people are just, it's working. We're Brian Kramer and the Shades of Blues, I think we called ourselves at that time, with Mats and Torgel and Pia. We were the house band, and we were basically, I realized personally through talking with everybody and just that, I had to redesign how to let people feel comfortable in this environment, because Swedes aren't used to this culture, jamming, and it's you can't put people off. You have to so I had devised some kind of mentality for it that we still do, and. It was just, I remember at one point at that session, Joseph Haddad came up to me, and there were 2 things. The first thing was that we were scheduled to do it every other week, right, at first. We weren't pushing it. And he comes up to us immediately and he says, we're doing this every week, right?
And what day in the week?
Saturdays, every Saturday. And the other thing he says is, wow, he goes,
the most attractive day.
Yeah. He goes, wow, quote unquote. People who listen to blues drink more than people who listen to jazz. We're a blues club now.
All right.
So anyway, that was, and then the next day in the Sunday edition, they had a full-page freaking expose on the jam, right? They don't do that shit anymore. Nobody writes about music or about what's going on, and they should. But they had a full page with a nice write-up and everything. From that moment, onward. It was like just a great journey, and we all just, experienced it together and grew at that point. 25 years ago, Sebbe.
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah, I was younger then. But was it 98?
Yes. Yeah.
I do the math.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Stockholm in the 90s.
Yeah.
It was good times for music, I think. What do you think? Stockholm in the 90s, Stockholm compared to these days? If you could just compare to 2005 or 2008 or...
For blues, it was an uphill battle as far as I was concerned. Not anymore. I mean, now it's like, you can't, as they say, swing a cat without hitting a blues musician in the old town, basically. But there were, yeah, sure, there was a lot of great people to see, a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, it was a little bit more easygoing then.
I was occupied, so,
Yeah. But then you find a collaboration with England.
Right.
England and maybe Santa Clara.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, the thing was when the relationship with Stompin was magnificent, and a few years into that, we started doing, because there was the other thing was, I feel like Mott should be talking about some of this stuff too. No. But the other thing was that, I mean, 'cause we were like really partners in crime through this whole thing, and like everything was just like this journey. And the thing, there was no really great places for acoustic music as well, and we loved that, and so we started doing at Visrum's first, I think, regular acoustic nights, which again, it was something else that wasn't really done regularly. Except by Izzy Young was doing it, but he was the only person that was doing like all acoustic, presentations and things like that. So we started like doing acoustic nights and like having guest musicians, and that was highly enjoyable. And we even like got the company of Sam Charters a few times, and his wife Ann, the great blues writer Sam Charters, who has an apartment in Sweden since the '60s, and. God, I got stories there too. But I mean, he used to hang out and listen to us, and we had just wonderful, blossoming, connected experiences with the music. That when I think about those days, all I think about is just the freedom to be able to do this stuff our way and just to enjoy it. And then, we branched out to Santa Clara as well. We did all acoustic regular shows there for quite a while, featuring, again, I wanted to feature, because there were a lot of great acoustic music that they couldn't come to Stockholm to play. They couldn't do it. And they told me this, and it's like I would like try and create an opportunity to like back them up or get them here and be heard the way they should be heard to a listening audience that way. So there were, but what happened was after 18 years at Stompin, Joseph Haddad had, he decided to sell the place and move on, and which was the end of like a very strong, important era. And the new guys that moved in, with all the best intentions that they had, just couldn't meet eye to eye with a lot of the basic things that I felt were needed to make it, a very, balanced, and good experience the way it has been. Mm-hmm. So I started to get like almost like ulcers from it. I wasn't enjoying it the same way, and eventually it just fell apart, without going into details, and it literally just fell to the curb. And at that point, I remember with Mats and some of the guys, it was like, well, 18 years is a damn good run, right? 18 years we've been doing this. That's nothing to, snub your nose at or sneeze at or anything. And if that's it, I'm happy with that. But we had just finished, and it was like just a week or so, and it's like I just wanted to give it one more time. So once again, I found myself parading around Stockholm looking for a place, just like the first time. Yeah. And it's the same thing. Nobody really wants, like what we had, there, or at least the places that I wanted to do that, like Akkurat, was the one place that I imagined doing it, Baccarat, because it was just a great environment and they had a great stage. But you know, the guy who booked the place didn't see it. He didn't want the headache of doing it, and he didn't need it. He said we don't need it here because we have our clientele, things like that. So I left Baccarat after a meeting, and I'm standing on the new Golden Bridge. That wasn't the Golden Bridge back then, between, what do you call it, Sluisen and Galveston. I'm standing on that bridge, going like, submitting, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I look over at Angolan, and I never saw Angolan as a place that would be blues friendly. My experience with England was always like cover band mentality, completely.
Yeah.
And it's like I've never even stood in there and listened to like a full song in my entire time here. That's all I really knew about the place, and maybe like a loosely Robert Wells connection to it. But I just looked over at the place, Angolan, and I just found myself walking in that direction. And, I walked in and I go to the basement, and because it's not open, and I go downstairs and they're doing renovation there as well. And I asked some guy, I says, who can I talk to about the music here? And there was a guy, a very well-dressed guy. And he says, well, you can talk to me for a minute. I tell him the situation that I had the blues jam at Stompin'. Oh, yes, I've heard about that. And all that. He says, well, things fell apart there and we're looking for another place to do it. And I'm like, he said, hold that thought for a second. And he gets his phone and he says, I'm going to have you talk to a guy. And he dials a number and he says, here, you talk to this guy. His name's Klaus. And I get on the phone and I says, hi, my name is Brian Kramer, and Martin here told me to give you a call. And it's like, oh, Brian, I was going to get in touch with you. Yeah. My name's Klaus Janssen, the singer, the jazz singer. Klaus Janssen.
Yeah, Klaus Janssen.
My name's Klaus Janssen, and I arrange shows in England. It's like, yeah, I heard about, like, I was thinking of asking you to, like, do something here, to do some shows and things like that. He says, well, I told him the situation. He said, okay, let's set up a meeting with the boss. This is within days. And I meet with Bjorn in his office above England, and
yeah, I've been there actually.
Yeah, with the big bear.
With the big bear, yes.
And he's like he's embracing, and he says, we're talking and we connect, and he says, oh, I had an apartment in New York for many years, right across the street from Carnegie Hall. I was never that highbrow, but.
Yeah.
Anyway, I tell him the situation, and I'm like, and I said, this is what we want, this is what we got paid before. And we're like, yes. I said, we have our audience, people will come. He was like, okay, no questions asked. He agreed, we'll do it. The way, keeping everything exactly the same that we did it at Stompin'. The time, everything, the frame, the whole mentality, things like that. He says, okay, when do you want to start? I said, this Saturday. He said, no. We need time to prepare. We need time to do promotion. I said, no, trust me, it's going to be packed. And that was the only thing that he was like, no. It was like early in the week, and he wanted to do it Saturday. Come Saturday, fucking line around the block, totally packed. They sold all the liquor on the shelves by the end of the day, and it was Klaus Janssen joined us on stage. So that was like the beginning of our relationship with the angel.
Wow.
The angel, yeah.
The angel was looking over me. So, and there's another little thing, because the thing is, there's a jazz singer, a wonderful singer named Isabella Lindgren.
Yeah,
you know Isabella?
yeah, sure.
And I met Isabella in New York a few years before, about a year or so before, give or take. And she was working in one of the little clubs in the village on Jones Street, Cafe Vivaldi. And the last night that I was doing a series of shows there, one of the places I played every year, the boss urged me to ask her to do a song. She was just getting bar. And, we talked a little bit, and she was very nice to me. And, I'm living in Sweden, and she's from Sweden, of course. And so she reluctantly, semi-reluctantly decides to sing. She looks a bit beaten up by the process of whatever, and the first notes out of her mouth were like a freaking horn out of Louis Armstrong's trumpet. I'd never heard anything that clear or resonating in my life. And anyway, the thing was that fast forward, when I left that night, I gave her my number and I said, I have a weekly gig, Blues Jam at Stompin'. Whenever you're in town, my stage is your stage. 4 or 5 months later, I get a message from her, I'm coming to Sweden, I'm ready to play. And our first gigs, basically, and our first time playing anywhere outside of like New York, where things sort of fell apart for her, was just, she only wanted to play blues. She wanted to go completely against everything that she was doing. She just wanted to pick blues songs, sing the blues, immerse herself in the blues, because she was feeling the blues. You know, and we had great times, great gigs, great everything. It was just great. Then she, you know, obviously her talents needed to be, you know, shared with more wider situations, of course. And so anyway, to wrap it up, Bjorn is the owner of Ladybird Records. And as we're leaving the meeting, you know, in his office, he's like, "Oh, by the way, you know, we have Ladybird Records, and this is our most, you know, revered, our best artist right now, Isabella Lundgren." And he shows me her record, and I'm like, and I was like, "Yeah, I know Isabella, and actually, I think this record's dedicated to me." And she's like, "What?" He's like, "1, 2, 3," and he rips off the plastic and he opens up, and there's this like, you know, to Brian Kramer, who taught me the blues, something like that. So that was like another like
a coincidence, fantastic coincidence.
The angel, you know. So anyway, the 25 years is now upon us, and we're on April 1st. We're going to be celebrating this incredible event.
April 1st, yeah. So it's a celebration of you and your baby.
That's right. I have to decide what's better, 25 or 60.
Yeah. Okay, but where is the celebration though?
It's going to be at England.
I'll be there.
At England.
I'll be there.
What we're doing is, usually when we do a big celebration, we really do it big. So what we're doing is, rather than having just the normal blues jam from 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock, we're extending it to midnight, which is going to make it a 10-hour event. Like a 10-hour basic ongoing event with all special guests from throughout the years. And people who have confirmed so far, it's like Isabella Lundgren, and Eric Bibb said he should be back by Australia by then, and he hopes to be there on stage, as well as Lisa Leasdown, and you know, many you know, great friends from throughout the years who have been staples with the Blues Jam, things like that. So.
Okay. So remember that 1st of April.
1st of April, England.
England.
Book your tables now. But what about you? You haven't told me about anything.
You can take it in the next round. I'll take it on the next round. This is your evening. So, thank you for asking, though. Okay, but yeah, I think we've come to the little bit of an end here. But just a small question. It sounds like you had a full-time job these 25 years. Did you? Or did you have any? Did you work with anything?
No, just the music.
Just the music.
We played a lot over the years. There were times when we were playing three times a week, if not more, touring the UK, Portugal, whoever would invite us. We were, you know, man, we had a lot of good gigs going on. And they paid well back then, and you actually could sell CDs too. Yeah. Things have changed a little bit since then, but music has always been, you know, there's always been a way through with the music. There's always been some way through, and it's like, that's, you know, one way or another, as long as the creativity doesn't suffer itself. So be it teaching, be it writing, be it arranging, be it performing, whatever it takes, you know, there's always a way through. You know, just make the process work.
Yeah.
And now it's art, you know, and music, and the art is exciting me, like, on this journey, and it's like, I'm excited to be able to do combinations with art and music where I can actually have exhibitions where I perform examples of the people that I'm drawing and
That's
talk
a good idea.
and talk about my relationship with them. I've already done a test run with that, and
That's
I would
really
like
good.
to like find opportunities to like do that as well, sort of like a living exhibition with music, art, and stories.
Yeah, and you can find more information on your website. Yeah, you can say the website or,
Sure,
or, or the Facebook page. Or
Yeah, the art website is briankramerbluesart.com, and the music is kramerblues.com. So yeah, and then I'm on Facebook. I have Brian Kramer Blues Art cartooning and illustration page. It's easy to find on my regular page as well. Yeah.
yeah,
It's out there.
yeah. And I want to spontaneous. I want to buy one. I don't know which one yet,
Yeah.
but some of them. Okay, and then before we leave, you had a prize. Actually, I found Brian on Wikipedia.
Oh,
You had a prize.
a prize.
Master Blues Artist.
Ah, that's right. We got that Blues
Blues Hall of Fame.
Blues Hall of Fame award. Yeah,
2015.
that's right. Yeah, we all got one of them. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, just like they have this sort of. I like it because the thing is, there's the blues, the Blues Foundation in Memphis, and basically they honor the establishment of blues, the established blues musicians. They honor, like, you know, the B.B. Kings, the Buddy Guys, the, you know, like all the established musicians. And this is another organization that they're established in different parts of America and in Europe, and they basically honor local heroes of the blues, and they research and they look into musicians, and they basically, why I like them is because they basically highlight them and basically give them, you know, okay, you know what I mean? It's an award, but at the same time, it's more of like an acknowledgement, like, hey, we see what you're doing, we appreciate it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, I was able to get, for instance, Larry Johnson into the New York Blues Hall of Fame, you know, before he passed away. And of course, I realized he wasn't in it, and I had other friends, including John Hammond, people like that, and many New York friends and heroes of mine. Johnny Winter had got this same award, this Blues Hall of Fame award. And Larry Johnson wasn't, so I arranged to get him, you know, at B.B. King's Club, he was presented with his award, and he played a few songs. And so it's like, so that was a nice little honor and a touch to get that.
Of course, yeah.
You know, the one that I really liked though was the one 2015 in Ormo. Like when I got the year's blues prize in Ormo, because I love the Ormo Blues Festival.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, and
Actually, yeah.
Niels, the proprietor of the festival, he's a good friend, and he's such a great fan. He's a great guy. And we did a great set. We just had a great time. And that was like one of the last times I got to see Sven Zetterberg, because we played just before him. One of my favorite blues heroes,
Yeah.
who passed away, the king of Swedish blues, Sven Zetterberg, who was a good friend, a master musician. And we did a killer set. Bert Diver, the mandolin player, joined us for some of it, and it was just great. It felt good. I still remember it. And as I'm walking off the stage, Niels is coming back on the stage, and I'm walking and he just grabs me. I'm like, oh fuck, what did I do wrong? And he grabs me and he pulls me, and he's got a bag with him, and he's got like, and he just basically says into the microphone, and it's very crowded. It's a very crowded festival, and he just basically announces that I get this year's prize, and a huge check came out, and this cute little like handmade like sculpture of me sitting with like my steel guitar. It was like they presented me with that by
Really
local
surprised.
artists. So that one I like, because that was like something that, you know, would never have imagined in a million years. So, I'm proud of it.
Yeah, you should be. You should be. Okay, thank you. And then to end with, you have also written a book.
Oh, a book. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, I do that too.
Out
The
of-
hardest thing I ever did.
Out of the blues.
Out of the blues. The hardest thing I've ever done in any of my artistic ventures, because I am a writer. I write regular articles for about a dozen years for the British blues magazine Blues Matters. You know, so I'm a regular contributor to the magazine on the staff, and you know, so I decided basically to tackle a book. You know, I like writing. The hardest thing I ever did. I admire great writers. I really do. I'm a big Steinbeck fan, and you know, so it's. I approached it like a 20,000 word poem or song. You know, but it's difficult. I mean, to be able to make the reality of the page that way. I mean, to read a book, to make sense with characters, environments, to see the environment, to taste it, and to have it all make perfect sense in reality. You know, God, that was like. You know, there was a time I was getting like schizophrenic from it because it was such a laborious. But I don't mean it was like difficult. Like I can't do it. I mean it was that heart wrenching to try and make it work. And it's like one day I'm having breakfast or something with Annika, and I think and I would do like these dives into it, where it was like I would just write until it was empty. And not look at it until the next day, just like free form, just writing. If I got like a scenario or something, forget it, with no place or no order or anything like that, I would just write, and then leave it alone. And I'm dyslexic, you know, number one. Number two, spell check kept changing the words. And so it's like I would read it back and I would get alternate sentences and things like that.
Oh, that's interesting.
But anyway, so it's like I'm having breakfast with Annika, and she's like, so I was writing last night. You getting anything? I said, yeah. Well, the characters started talking to me about this, and she's like, wait, what? I said, did you say the characters were talking to you? Yeah, they're telling me like what they want to do. And I was saying it very matter of factly, like it was like because they were talking to me. They were like these characters. I was seeing them in a dimensional form, and they were actually telling me, "Don't do that shit. We wouldn't do that. Why would? If you wouldn't do it, why would we do it?" And that was when I knew I was like hopeless at that point. But anyway, I wrote the book. It was a heart-wrenching labor of love. I'm very proud of it. And the thing is that I went to God. There's so much background to this. That happened because one of my students' father is a publisher, and you know, I was at his house, and I had this sort of mostly written autobiography that I had many pages of an autobiography, and I wanted someone to just read it to put me out of my misery, to see if there was any value in it. I literally wanted him to say, "You're a good musician, Brian," and then leave a pause there. But and also I hate asking people that stuff because, you know, it's like somebody asking me to listen to their demo, you know, kind of thing. And having to be honest with them when it sucks. You know, so he listens, he reads it over a trip to Gothenburg, I think, or something like that, and he writes me back, and I say, "Hey, I read what you sent me." I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah." He says, "It's publishable." I was like, I was not expecting that at all. And he said, "You have to meet with me. There's some things that you need to do and understand to shape it better. But yeah, there's something." So I was like, holy shit, I did not expect that at all. I met with him. He gave me these great guides. He gave me his guidance because he's an author. Hans Olaf. And but that's when I realized I did not want to have anything published that was based on fact in my lifetime while I was still here. for so many reasons. Number one, many of the people are still here and they have their sides of stories. It's like I basically wrote this thing as a document for all this like incredible journeys that I've been through, and for my kids, so that they can like ponder this later. When I wrote it to document literally for them. It was like
Okay.
for that. But when I realized that, I thought to myself, what can I do? So that's when I got the premise for this story in Out of the Blues, and I realized that I can attach all very key experiences in my life to several characters in the book without actually having it to be about me specifically. So fact, fiction combined in that regard, which is basically what fiction is. You know, every author probably puts a large piece of himself in it. So that's what I did. I sculpted a story based on my own experiences, but the names were changed to protect the innocent, as they say.
Interesting.
You know, and there's a guy right now, I hope he doesn't see this, but he is in LA, and he's a good friend that we've become very close to, basically through the internet. And he's a great guy, and he's a novelist, and he's a screenwriter in Hollywood, and he saw me playing Washington Square Park in New York in the early days, and I reluctantly gave him a copy of my book. I sent it to him with a piece of art, things like that, and he's exactly the kind of guy that I don't want to tell me they read my book. And he didn't read it for a while, for like over a year or so, and then he finally said, hey, I'm going to start reading your book in the car while I'm picking up my kids. And now he's like hooked on it, and he told me, he says, he gave me the best compliment that anyone's ever given me. He basically said, you don't write like a musician, you write like a writer.
Oi.
You know, it's a good book.
That's a compliment.
And he feels it, and the other great compliment is that he says, I'm reading something that I feel like I wrote, and I forgot that I wrote, and I'm reading it again. You know, and this is from someone who's like a really good writer, novelist. So that's literally as we speak now.
Yeah. You're getting, this is really inspiring, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah, very.
What else you want to talk about?
Yeah, this is a guy who make music, makes arts, written books, and yeah, perfect.
We desperately need a part 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but shall we stop here, or do you want to end with a song?
We can do a song.
Yeah,
It
let's
feels
do a
fitting.
song.
Music.
Somebody told me better change is gonna come. Somebody told me a better change is gonna come. I hope I get here real soon now, for my time is done. Turn my TV on, can't stand the world I see. Turn my TV on, can't stand the word I see. Was this world gonna come to, Lord, Lord, what gonna come upon me? You go to no doctor, I can't afford the goddamn fee. Can't go to no doctor, I can't afford that fee. Should I fill my prescription or get something to eat? Let me tell you, the man in the big house, you know it promised, you know it swore. He said he'd set things straight. I said a man in the big house, you know what I'm talking about. Said he'd set things straight. Well, he's on his way and he's far from gone, and the next one will be champagne. Somebody told me a better change is gonna come. Somebody told me a better change is gonna come. I hope you get here real soon now, for my time is done. Hope you get here real soon now, for my time is done. Hope you get here real soon. Ooh, a lot I need now. Gotta have it. I hope you get here real soon, for my time is done.
Kramer.
Tack så mycket för ikväll. Verkligen. Tack så mycket och tack så mycket Brian.
Thank you, Sebbe. Very
Det
much.
var fantastiskt kul att ha er här. Denna snöiga dag som kommer gå till historien som snöstormskvällen. Brian som kom hit hela vägen från Hedemora.
Yeah, I'm staying over tonight, so
Okay.
and hopefully not stranded.
Perfect.
Let's do our song as well. We can finish up, but I mean, let's do that other song. You want to do
Sure.
it?
No,
No.
no,
You sure?
no, it was a good ending,
Huh?
so I don't want to destroy it.
Okej.
Yeah.
Bra, precis. Tack så mycket.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming out in the storm. Thank you, Sebbe, for a great event.
Really nice to have you here. Yeah,
Thank you, Cornelius, for looking over us.
yeah exactly.